bill that protected property rights, any bill that diminished the eminent domain that is there. But Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. That put carbon credits out here to the hundreds of billions of dollars. And in Iowa, our ethanol plants, of course, all across the Corn Belt, they emit CO2. And it goes back into the corn stalk the next year. We need it to grow our crops. But that CO2 is the largest mass of the purest form of CO2 known anywhere in the world. So that makes it the low-hanging fruit for these money grubbers that want to take that CO2 and sequester it, put it into pipelines, connecting all our ethanol plants, and pump it into the ground and then put their hand out for us to pay the bill for the tax credits. And by the way, there's Chinese investment in Summit, Bruce Rastetter's operation. Do you recognize his name, Bruce Rastetter? He's the lead on this, and I have known him for a long time. And so he is what I call him, the puppeteer of the prairie. And I made the statement on Alex Jones here a week or two ago. Anybody ever watch Alex? I'm sure all of you guys, yeah, there we go. And all the young hands go up, in case you weren't noticing. Good deal, almost all of them. Anyway, so I made the statement on Alex Jones that Bruce Rastetter has invested in the governors of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and the leadership within the legislatures of those states. And I said it looks to be that they are the wholly owned subsidiary of Bruce Rastetter. He controls them, he manipulates them, and now what happens? First is that Donald Trump had never criticized Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy had never criticized Trump, and still hasn't, I don't believe. But yesterday, Donald Trump took a shot at Vivek, and it was, Vivek's not MAGA. Well, if Vivek's not MAGA, is Trump? But he almost argues that he's the only one that could be. If Vivek can't be MAGA also, and that was part of the shot. A little bit other on top of that. And so that happened when Trump took the shot at Vivek. 2 hours later, Bruce Rastetter, CEO of Summit, puppeteer of the prairie, that he came out and endorsed Trump. Now, there are no such thing as coincidences in politics, and if you want to try to fake it like one, you don't do something almost simultaneously. That's what they did. So you figure this out. What it amounts to is that Rastetter has gone on this side with Trump. Trump cannot and will not now defend our constitutional rights. I've been pleading with him now for weeks to come out and take a stand on property rights of our Constitution that says, you probably teach it, Tom, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And but that case needs to be cleaned up. Our Iowa Constitution still sustains that language. And yet, if they grant eminent domain to Bruce Rastetter's pipeline company in Iowa, they will bulldoze their way through 700 miles of the best farmland in the world with eminent domain by condemning that property. And you out there that grew up on this land like I did, you sweat on that land. There's no farm out there we didn't sweat on. No farm out there we didn't bleed into. And it's private, it's our own property. A man's home is his castle. And he wants that by eminent domain, and yet you can't buy a share in his company. There was a fellow named Bob Ritter that testified under oath. He said they offered him $100,000 for an easement. He turned it down. They came back and offered him $200,000 for an easement. He said, I'll consider it if I can take it in shares of this pipeline investment you have. They said, yeah, can't do that. You can't buy into our company, but we're going to take your land. There's one candidate that is aggressively defending our property rights. Not only hitting all these notes that I said all along the way, having vision, looking over the horizon, a plan for the long term in America and the short term on how to get there. But there's one person that's standing up saying, I will fight with you to the end. Whatever happens in the election, Vivek Ramaswamy is with us on this. I'm fighting to the end, too. We formed an organization to do this in all of these states. I didn't come here to do that commercial, but we are going to take this all the way. And the man that will be standing there at the end with a great big high five with me is going to be the next president of the United States, Vivek Ramaswamy.
We'll give this man a round of applause to Steve King, one of the best congressmen you ever had. Proud of this guy. Thank you. Proud to have his endorsement. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And I want to say that one of the things I've enjoyed about having the likes of Steve King and Steve Holt, who Jake mentioned earlier, many other people who have endorsed this campaign, is these are constitutional conservatives. People who are unafraid of speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, actually.
And there's a reason why I'm the only candidate in this race who's able to tell you certain things. That I'm against this CO2 pipeline using eminent domain to seize the land of innocent farmers across this state. That it's based on a climate change agenda that actually is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. To tell you that Ronna McDaniel, the failed chairwoman of the RNC, needs to step aside after 5 failed years of leadership. To tell you that I'll pardon every peaceful January 6th protester on my first day in office because it's the right thing to do for this country, that we need to strip vaccine manufacturers of their special liability exemptions that stop them from being sued even when a normal company is sued if they sell you a product that harms you. And the reason why is our politics has become corrupt, actually. Almost every politician at the federal level anyway, state level too, most of them, are dancing to the tune of their biggest donor. And in my case, my biggest donor is me. I don't report to them. I report to you, the citizens of this country. I'd rather speak the truth and lose some election than to win by playing some fake game of political snakes and ladders. But the bet I've made in this campaign, and I think we're going to be rewarded for it tomorrow night. It's not up to me. That's up to you. The bet I've made is that's going to be the winning strategy. We deserve a government that, again, tells the truth to the people again. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. And so that's what this campaign is all about. Tell you a word about myself. My parents came to this country 40 years ago with no money in search of opportunity. In a single generation, I have gone on to found multiple successful companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, who is a throat surgeon at Ohio State, though she's crisscrossing the state today, doing her events as well. Raising our 2 sons. Following our faith in God. That's the American dream. And I am worried that that American dream isn't going to exist for our kids and their generation unless we all step up and actually do something about it. And the thing that pulled me into this race a little over a year ago when I sat down with Apurva, and we had a serious conversation that I felt it was our duty to step up and do this for our country. It came after that red wave that actually never arrived. Remember that? The election? Yeah. They blame Trump. They'll blame abortion. No, there's something deeper going on. It's that we as a Republican Party, we have lost our way. We've become lazy, actually. I don't mean lazy in the get out the vote operation sense of lazy. There's some of that too. I mean lazy in a deeper sense of defining who we are and what we even stand for. Now, the left is good at this, actually. They'll give you a vision. It's not the right vision, but they'll give you something. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here criticizing that left-wing vision, but without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for? What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? To me, it means we believe in the ideals of 1776. If there's 2 things this campaign is built on, 2 basic ideas that our country was founded on, it's this. Number 1 is that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not the shadow government in the deep state that's pulling the strings today. If there's one thing I get done as your next president, one war that I will wage as your next president, it's not some pointless foreign war abroad. It's going to be the war on our own shadow government right here at home in the United States of America. If you want to actually shut down the deep state, I'm going to be the guy to get that job done for you. We're going to get serious about draining the swamp. Here's how we're going to do it. On day 1, I will initiate a mass firing of 75% of all federal bureaucrats on my first day in office. That is how you drain the swamp. For the government agencies that have lost their way, from the FBI to the ATF to the CDC to the U.S. Department of Education, we're not just going to politely reform them. We're going to get in there and shut them down. That's how you revive our constitutional republic. I won't start with last year's budget as the baseline, which is based on the year before's budget, which is based on the prior year's budget before that, all of which is corrupt, all of which is broken. That's how you get a $34 trillion national debt. I'm not going to use that rotten budget from the past. We're going to start with 0 as the baseline. and ask what's actually necessary. Zero-based budgeting. That's how I've run my businesses. That's how I'm going to run the federal government. And that's how we tackle our national debt crisis so the next generation doesn't grow up with $200,000 of somebody else's debt on your shoulders that you didn't sign up for. That's my obligation to you in the next generation. That is how you drain the swamp. If I can't work for you for more than 8 years as your next president, which is a good thing, by the way, neither should any of those federal bureaucrats who are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That is how you drain the swamp. This isn't black or white, thank you. Not Democrat or Republican. That's the first basic idea of this campaign and the way I'm going to lead this country. The people who we elect to run the government should actually run the government. And number two is this. The moral duty that they owe, that we owe, that I will owe to you as your next president, is to the citizens of this country, not any other one. I'm not going to fork over more of our money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. No, we're done with that. That's where it's gone. Ukraine just the other day, we hear now killing an American journalist who was there for the high crime of criticizing Zelensky, was in prison and died in prison. We're not subsidizing somebody else's war to defend against an invasion across somebody else's border. What I'll do as your next commander-in-chief on day one is use our own military to protect against the invasion on our own southern border in this country and our own northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law in this country. On day one, we will end. I swear an oath to the Constitution, I'm going to keep it. We will end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals in this country. It does not apply to them. We will stop using your money, our money, to pay these cities to house sanctuary cities for illegal migrants to this country. End the incentives to be here illegally. A nation that does not protect its own borders is not a nation. If we have 3 million Chinese on the western border, 3 million Iranians on the eastern border, we'd call that what it is. It's an invasion. It's no different if it's on our own southern border as well. And so I'm going to keep us out of World War III. I'm going to declare economic independence from communist China. But I will foremost use our own national defense spending to actually defend our own homeland right here at home in the United States. Cyber attacks, super EMP, electromagnetic pulse attacks, missile defense systems that were missing, border defenses that are clearly missing. That's what it means to actually put this country first. And a country that, by the way, is going to send our sons and daughters. We're here today in a room where I believe there are a number of veterans in this room today. The way we actually honor those who serve this country is to make sure we don't send them to fight somebody else's war, but to say that if you are going to put your life on the line for this country, it's not just to say honor our troops, a cheap slogan. The way you honor our troops is to make sure, God forbid, if they're ever put in harm's way or the risk of harm's way, it is to protect the interests and the citizens of this nation. That's how I'm going to lead as your commander-in-chief. So I don't think that's too much to ask. That the people who we elect to run the government should run the government, and that the moral duty they owe is to the citizens of this nation, not any other one. It's not a black idea or a white idea or a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. These are American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country in 1776. And I believe we live in a 1776 moment right now. If our founding fathers were here, they would tell us, you know what, we did it the first time. You still have another 250 years and then some still left in you. But it doesn't happen automatically. It steps up because you seize the moment just as we did to do what's right for your country. It doesn't happen automatically. Every one of us has a role to play. I'm volunteering to play mine. That's what tomorrow's about. Cold weather, they say. George Washington didn't complain about the weather when he crossed the Delaware. Okay. Our founding fathers would tell us to toughen up a little bit. For those who are able to safely get there in all seriousness, I'm going to ask you to do it. Take 30 minutes of your time to save this country. I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of time in the next 24 hours, as much as you have, to tell 10 people who aren't in this room with us about what we're talking about today. bring them out with you too. And if you all do your part, I promise you, my family and I, my wife Apurva and I, we will do ours to make sure, not in some fake politician way, but to make sure in a true way that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families and our United States of America. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless every one of you who has served this country. We are proud of you for your country. And if you've had this country's back, we have yours. Thank you, guys. God bless you. And thank you to the American Legion. And thank you for having us here. It was beautiful, beautiful Center, beautiful American Legion. We're good to be here and good to open your arms to us. Thank you. Now, I want to open this up, especially if anybody does have any questions relating to our from our veterans or any one of ours. Just raise your hand extra high if you're a veteran who's served this country, and I'll make sure we get to you given where we are. Any veterans that want to go first, we'll give them a chance. We'll start with you, sir.
So first, I appreciate the last attempt you had to visit here you weren't able to make. Truly appreciated that Zoom call. It clearly mattered to you. That,
it did.
You know that
it hurt.
Listening to us on that Zoom call, that was greatly appreciated. My question is, one of the many reasons I'll be caucusing for you tomorrow is the zero-based budgeting. Mm-hmm. Assuming you're elected and implement that, how does it actually happen? I mean, you can say that, but those departments are going to say, okay, give Vivek the same budget we had last year, run the numbers to make it work. How do you make that happen?
Yeah. Sure. So I think the first thing we do is on day one, before we even have a budget cycle, we're initiating mass firings of 75% of the bureaucrats. We're going in phases, but we're starting it on day one, 75% across the board. We show them we're serious. That's the first thing we do. This isn't talk. Can the president do that? The answer is yes. They actually duped Donald Trump on this one. Like on many things, actually, but on this one, too. They said you can't fire those civil service employees because there are civil service protections. Well, read the law. Those civil service protections do not apply to mass firings. And mass firings are what I'm bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. We're going to start by shutting down many agencies. We'll start with the first 4, starting on day one in office. Put those in motion. FBI, ATF, CDC, and U.S. Department of Education. Now, I'll tell you what that, thank you. That's pretty serious. You can't reform these agencies. You got to shut them down. Now, people say, how is this, like practically, how could that work? What do you guys going to happen to federal law enforcement? I want to shut down the FBI because I care about federal law enforcement. The top law enforcement bureau in the country is what I call the failed Bureau of Investigation. They're effectively making up the law as they go along, at least the bureaucrats there are. So take the 35,000 employees at the FBI. 20,000 of them are back office bureaucrats at the J. Edgar Hoover building. They're the ones making up the law as they go along. They're going to go home and find honest work. The 15,000 on the front lines, cops, investigative agents, we will use them, but we'll move them to the U.S. Marshals or to the DEA, both of which have been far more effective at fighting child sex trafficking rings or the fentanyl epidemic. We'll move them to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at Treasury, where they actually have a better expertise to be able to go after the FTXs and the SBFs, the financial fraudsters of the world. So it's deeply practical where we start. So then we show we're serious. Now we're talking about, for the ones that remain, show me starting from zero, build it up exactly one by one to show me what's actually necessary. A lot of this also just is generic spending from the past that automatically flows. I don't think that in zero-based budgeting, that's where you root out the rot of eliminating funding for Planned Parenthood. Our taxpayer money should not be being used to fund Planned Parenthood. Now, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I believe. Why are our taxpayer dollars going to pay hostility to life? But when you pick that as a one-off, because a lot of times many presidential candidates may say something like that, but then in this giant morass, I'm going to go pick that one thing, and it's the right thing to do. That should, I think abortion is wrong. But I think the federal government also should not be paying for it. But once you do that, you get trapped in the political battles. Whereas what I'm saying is that's, as it relates to a budgetary perspective, that's one of tens of thousands of line items that shouldn't be coming from the federal government anyway. And so when we start with zero, that's actually how you clear the rot in the first place. But the key is showing them you're serious right when you get in, 75% mass firing getting started, 4 agencies, day one that we begin, with the next 4 then to follow after 6 months. That's exactly how we're going to be able to get serious about zero-based budgeting. And then I'm going to give one technical point. I can't resist. But so the budget requests to Congress used to say, so what happened is the executive would provide a draft budget to Congress. Okay? And the draft budget would ask for permission to spend. And they would say, well, we may spend X. This is the draft language is. And then Congress would come back and it'll give you what you need to say. Over time, when the deep state started to take over the budgeting process, they tweaked the language a little bit before they submitted the draft language to Congress. It started to say shall spend. So the president didn't know this happening. So it goes to Congress. Congress doesn't know what's happening. It's acting like an assembly line. Congress starts passing laws, and the draft appropriations language says shall spend. So then it comes back to the president. Say you get a guy like Trump in there and says, oh, well, maybe I want to cut this. The deep state comes back, oh, Mr. President, Congress says you shall spend it, and your hands are tied. Under my watch, all of the draft appropriations language runs through the White House. It will not go from an agency directly to Congress. It's going to run through actual direct White House oversight, including people from outside the government who are going to come in and oversee this step by step. And that's how I'm not going to be duped in the same way that Donald Trump was. So that answers your question. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So all those budget requests run through the White House, and we're going to go back to may rather than shall. I could go all day on this one, but I'll resist and stop myself there. So thank you. I appreciate it. We had one back there? Yes, sir. Right. Yeah.
I met you a couple of months ago in Iowa City. And first, let me just say God bless you for your passion, your genuine passion for the foundation of this country. You're remarkable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
First, I'd like you to talk a little bit. I don't know how many people in the room would agree with me, but there's no doubt in my mind that the 2020 election was stolen. I don't think there's any doubt voter fraud played a huge role in what happened. And the Ganesh Jesus's 2,000 meals.
And don't forget tech as well.
Oh, no doubt.
The tech algorithms and what they did.
Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts and anything that can possibly be done to secure the election process this time around? So
let me just say something. I did leave it out of my opening speech, but I usually would have mentioned it. I just didn't this time. So I focused a lot so far on what I'm going to get done as the chief executive. Right? The promises I've made so far are the promises that I don't even require Congress for. Actually. Moving the troops to the southern border, I get to do that as the commander-in-chief. Ending birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals, that's a law enforcement viewpoint on the Constitution that reflects the 14th Amendment. Shutting down agencies, firing 75% of bureaucrats, I'm going to do that as your next president. That'll give us the tailwind to really get a lot of momentum then to drive a legislative agenda through. And the top item on my legislative agenda is to secure our elections in this country. And I'll tell you what I'm going to set. We have a clear plan for it. I think we can unite the country around this. I don't think what I'm about to tell you is a traditional Republican or Democrat idea. It certainly shouldn't be, and if it is, it tells you a lot. Single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued voter ID to match the voter file, and English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. That is how we secure elections in this country. I think this can unite us, a civic ritual we go through one day a year, at least that we take and pause as a national holiday to say that this is what it means to be an American. Everybody settles our differences not in the back of a 3-letter government agency building, not in the back of a palace in old world Europe, not in the back of BlackRock's corner office in Manhattan. No. We settle it at the ballot box where every citizen has a voice and a vote. That's a beautiful thing that we commemorate on one day per year to remember who we are. I think it's unifying to have English as the national language of the United States, including at least as the sole language that appears on a ballot. We're a nation founded on ideals. And as I often will recognize, talking to the left, our diversity can be a beautiful thing, but it only matters if there's something greater that unites us across that diversity. Right? Without that, if you just think about it, look at it, guys. I mean, I'm looking around the room today. We got a couple of different shades of melanin. I brought one. Okay, you're welcome. Right? We have, a couple genders in the room. 2 of them, to be precise. There are 2 genders, as we have said. And so that's great. We're diverse. So what? unless there's something greater that unites us across that diversity. Because without that, I mean, think about it. We're a bunch of different looking two-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin, walk in some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. I mean, that's the way the country looks at time. There's more to this than the aimless passage of time. In a deeper spiritual sense, we're put here for a purpose. But even in the civic sense, our country is founded on a shared identity and shared set of purpose grounded in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. For a nation founded on ideals, we need a common language to communicate that with one another. Do you think we're going to be more united as a country if you have a bunch of different people coming to this country speaking a bunch of different languages, unable to communicate with each other? Or do we say, no, there may be people from many different backgrounds, but we're a melting pot in this country where we're able to communicate our ideals with one another and live up to our creed of e pluribus unum, which means from many, one. And so that's how I hope to marshal what's required. Is it's not this bickering about which side is going to win the elections because we run them which way. This is about who we are. And once we're united in that, I'll make a pledge and a commitment to this country, and I'll keep it. If we get the things that I have said, we will get through Congress. I will keep my promise as president. Single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday, paper ballots, government-issued ID, and English as the language on the ballots. Then I will lead our party and our movement to do our part to say we're done complaining about stolen elections. We're done, the left, takes great umbrage to whenever somebody points this fact out about the 2020 election. Great for my part to say that, well, you know what, each side will point to the other and say threat to democracy. We're done with that whole threat to democracy debate. It doesn't land well on my ears now when it comes through CNN or MSNBC on a given day, because the very threats to democracy are the people who decide to keep people off ballots, which is, I think, dead wrong. But I want to move our nation forward by standing for the basic principles. And the first step, and that's why I put that first of what I'm going to get through Congress, we will secure our elections by the next midterm election after I take over. That's how they're going to be conducted, and that's how we get this country back. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. God bless our nation. Thank you, sir.
I just want to say I'm a high school teacher, and I came around to you within the last 24 hours.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
You feel the energy, you feel the life, and the kids give it back to you.
Yeah.
And that's what brought me to you.
Thank you.
Was your energy, because we need leaders who are energetic and are passionate about what they do.
Thank you.
The second thing is the life issue is very, very important to me. And my daughter convinced me that you were the most pro-life candidate. Mm-hmm. So for that, I thank you.
Thank you.
My last thing that I'm going to ask is a little out there.
It's a lot.
I'm a science teacher.
Okay.
I'll just say that I'm a person who's very curious.
Mm-hmm.
Within the past few years, we're hearing really strange things about what's happening in our skies and in our waters around our country. And I'm not one of those people that are out there, but I am curious as to what is going on with our national security and these videos and these things that we are seeing as it relates to our country.
Yes.
And right behind you it says truth.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how on the first day you're going to address the truth as to what's going on in our skies and in our waters in our national security.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate your first comment. That means a lot to me. And thank you for bringing your father, your uncle. Thank you. I appreciate that, guys. Bring him along. And I'll ask you sort of spread the message in the 24 hours you have left. I think energy and vigor does matter in a president, actually. I think it's going to take somebody now more than ever with fresh legs to reach and lead the next generation of Americans. It's the honor of our lifetime to have done and been in the state for the better part of the last year. We've done 390 of these events, over 390, which is more than all the other candidates combined, actually. And it's humbling. It takes some energy to drive across the state, but then, Steve King proves me. He's been driving around the state right there with us, and he seems to have every bit as much or more energy. So it's not just an age thing. It's about who brings that spirit for our country. And this is what gives me my energy, actually. You all are here for a reason. The same reason I'm in this, the same reason Steve does what he does, is we're patriots who care about this country and understand we're going to have to take the time and effort to dedicate to this country, or else nobody else is going to step up and do it for us. And so That's why Iowa goes first. If you asked me a year and a half ago, does it matter whether Iowa goes first? I wouldn't have told you it wasn't a particularly important thing one way or the other. I've now been converted myself, and so you all have also brought me along. And I'm an evangelist for why this state goes first, and we're going to keep it intact because it has a special role to select a president without the fake super PAC ads being the sole thing that. Yeah, well, we do it this way, though. That's what we're going to find out tomorrow night. I think this is how the system should work. I think we're going to shock the system. My gut says we're going to win the Iowa caucus tomorrow night because I think that this is the way that it should be decided, not by a lot of the fakery that comes through the mega money influence on politics. So anyway, thank you for that. On your question about UAPs, which is, I think, what you were hovering around there, so to speak. Yeah. On UFOs, UAPs. So I spoke to David Grush, actually. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was the individual who actually testified in front of Congress. And I talked to him after his congressional testimony, largely because I just want to hear the views of myself. I'm a civilian right now. I'm a businessman. I'm running for president. I think it's going to take an outsider coming in. But I'm not coming into the system with that knowledge of what's on the other side. I'm just no different than any of you. I'm curious. And I have to say that if a guy, not just him, but the other colleague of his who also ended up testifying, lays out a lot of the knowledge, and that's the testimony where it came out that there were biological remains that were not identified or known, and that the U.S. government had classified this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a fact observer. But what I will say is that if there are whistleblowers from inside the government that say that we haven't been told certain things, and the place where my mind first went is this an adversary here at home, right? China, Russia, doesn't matter, here on planet Earth. Are there aspects of life on Earth in the oceans that we have not yet discovered that we ought to know something about? As we're adopting climate change policies in the name of rising oceans, we should have a curiosity about what the heck is actually going on. Even in the bottom of our own seas that may have been here doesn't mean that you're some alien conspiracy theorist. But do we know everything about the oceans in this country? No. And so that sounds to me a lot less conspiratorial than the idea that somehow emitting carbon dioxide in the air 50 years ago was going to give us a global ice age before suddenly it changed its mind and decided it was going to create global warming. And we have to somehow flog ourselves, wear a hair shirt, stop burning carbon even as we shift it to China, right? And somehow you can emit carbon dioxide in the United States and that will cause the planet to burn. But somehow if you shift those emissions to China, it doesn't have that same effect. Yeah, that sounds like a lot more ridiculous to me than anything you're saying. And yet that's exactly what's guiding the public policies of this country. And so I think it's okay to be curious about the truth of other aspects of our planet that we may not have gotten to the bottom of. But I'm not going to tell you what I don't know. And there's one man he shared a lot with me that I thought was interesting that he also shared with Congress. But what I will tell you is, whatever it is, we're going to give you the truth. We deserve a government that tells the people the truth again. We have a government that doesn't trust the people with the truth. And I think this is what I've come to understand is I see the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that never was. The Hunter Biden laptop story, which absolutely was factually true before they told you it was made-up Russian disinformation on the eve of the last election. The COVID origin absolutely started from a lab in Wuhan, which you're told for the longest time that it didn't start in a lab in Wuhan. The truth of what happened on January 6th, the video footage that was released later, that was initially suppressed to create one public impression. How our money's being spent in Ukraine now. We haven't been transparently told how our money's been squandered. The Nashville Transgender Shooter Manifesto that was never released, that we were lied to. Whatever the truth is, just give us the truth. And the thing that I've learned is that you initially think it's like a nefarious kind of plot to sort of keep the truth from you because the government is somehow hostile to you. I think it's even worse than that, which is that the government thinks they're doing you a favor when they don't tell you the truth. The people in that position, they don't see themselves as criminals that are quietly getting away with it. They see themselves as benevolent leaders that are keeping the truth from the public that the public can't handle, actually. See, they think they're coming from a place of benevolence. And that's what you have to understand to get to the root cause of it. It's what they think of is not just a lie, it's the noble lie. To me, no lie is noble. That's what I believe. And I think that once you understand that, then you realize what you're up against. It's like the end of that movie, A Few Good Men. You got Jack Nicholson, Colonel Jessup on the stand. What does he say? You can't handle the truth. That's effectively what's embedded in it. We say, we the people, we can handle the truth. We demand the truth. We require the truth. That's what our founding fathers set into motion. And that's the word I'll keep as your next president when it's easy or hard, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. I can give you this. We'll go to the next question.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Speaking of shocking the system, in 2012, Ron Paul got 21.4% of the vote in the Iowa caucus. And in many precincts here in eastern Iowa, actually got first or second. And there's some commonalities between you as a candidate and Ron Paul, in that you were both former libertarians running as Republicans. And you're kind of seen as you guys both don't have mega donors or anything like that. Could you kind of compare and contrast yourself with Ron Paul, if you know much about him?
Yeah, I do.
And why you were once a libertarian and now kind of see yourself as a Republican, kind of compare and contrast.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been talking to Ron recently, actually. We've done a couple podcasts together. We're talking about even bringing him up here, which it looked at, but then the weather started. A lot of the people we wanted to bring in, snow got in the way of that stuff, and so we might do a teletown hall together in the next day or so. But he's somebody I've grown to admire immensely. He's a man of principle. And I think he and I share something in common, is that we would each rather speak the truth, or at least our own convictions, rather than to try to spout back to people what the polls tell us that you're supposed to say. Now, the reason I don't call myself a libertarian, even though probably 95% of my views align with what would be a classically libertarian view, is that I believe, foremost, that yes, we need a government that stays out of the way of individuals who are able to freely live their lives and to make their own choices without the government getting in the way. But I would say the scope of what I care about as a leader of this country actually goes beyond just that relationship of the regulations that do or do not impede the individual. So as much as a solid libertarian would, I'm against the regulatory overreach that impedes the individual, but I also think there's more. I think half the job of the next U.S. president is also standing for our national character, answering who we are. And I think there's something deeper going on in our country that doesn't quite relate to the government. The government's played a role in it, but I think there's something deeper going on right now. We're young people. I think it's true of all of us right now. We are lost. We are hungry for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that void in our hearts, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And that leaves a moral vacuum in our black heart, a black hole of a vacuum, I would say, in our hearts. And when you have that vacuum that runs that deep, that's when the poison fills the void. And we obsess over the poison too much at times, right? We can pick your favorite one in some ways. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, Zelenskyism, as I sometimes say, it's become a kind of religious fixation, really. Depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I think half the job of the next U.S. president is just through the example we set, fill that void with the vision of what it means to be an American. I'm an America First conservative, but to put America first, we now have to rediscover what America is. We're hungry to be part of something bigger than ourselves, yet we can't even answer really what it means to be an American. And I think that, too, is part of my job as the next president. And so that's why I call myself a conservative, America First conservative, not a classical libertarian, not because I'm opposed to those views, but because the set of views that I have are even more expansive. And you know what? I've talked to Ron Paul more recently, not him as a candidate. I think he actually agrees with that. I think that maybe it may have even been a little bit different than where he was in 2012 about the importance of that. We've done 2 podcasts together on his podcast. And, we stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us. And to me, he'll definitely be one of the giants on whose shoulders I expect to stand with this movement. This time, though, not just to make a point and move the terms of conversation. I'm doing this to be your next president. And you know what? Speaking of libertarians, if Javier Milei in Argentina has got that job done, I'll tell you about me. If I haven't made him look like a moderate by my first 3 months in office, then I haven't done my job either. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll come to you, sir.
Good. Thank you very much for the sacrifice you're making. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I came in from San Francisco.
Oh, nice.
Because I wanted to be here to celebrate when you shut the door tomorrow.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on inflation? Like, my money is not worth what it was a couple of years ago.
No kidding. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on it and how we can address it.
Yeah. Thank you, man. So I'll give you the simple answer. It's actually what probably Ron Paul would give you. It's probably what Ludwig von Mises would give you. This is a classical answer. We've known this for a long time. Increase the supply of everything. Fill in the blank, almost everything that matters. Increase the supply of energy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. Get our oil and natural gas out of the ground and sell it, for God's sake. And you can use that to buy down $8 trillion of our national debt. Right off the bat, that's how you actually fix our national debt crisis without even touching Social Security or Medicare along the way. And so that's number one. Increase the supply of, fill in the blank, housing. We have a housing constraint in this country because we have land use restrictions that stop us from new home construction, especially smaller lot home construction. And then additional regulations now coming from the EPA for new home construction. Get rid of those regulations. That increases the supply of housing, brings down the cost, grows this economy. If you're a small business owner, one of the top difficulties to expand your small business today is finding workers to fill the open positions, for God's sake. Why? We're paying people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work, using our taxpayer money to do it. No longer do that. That increases the supply of labor, brings down the cost for small businesses in our supply chain, grows this economy. So that's the answer. Increase the supply of everything. What's holding the supply back? Regulations. 75% mass headcount reduction with a lot of the regulations to go with it. Cross those out. And you know what? We have a growing economy again. And that's how you do this and fight inflation while you're at it. I appreciate that, man. Okay, we have time for one last question, right? We'll give it to you, young man. Oh, did she have one as well? We'll take the last two then. We'll go quickly. I can't say no. I have a weakness.
I'd like to have you clarify your position on the Ukraine.
Sure.
Probably from two standpoints. What you think you would do, and some of the proposals, I've been a little confused, so I'd like
Okay.
to clarify that. But if Russia going into the Ukraine violates our UN Constitution, do we have any reason to believe any agreement we do with Russia?
Sure. So I could go all day on this one, actually, because I'm very deep on this. But since you asked, let me just give you the clear punchline here. I think we've already, you're referring to an agreement we made in 1994 in what's called the Budapest Memorandum. It is my firm view that we have already more than kept the commitments that we made to Ukraine in that Budapest Memorandum. But actually, we've also made other commitments, like in 1990 when James Baker, the U.S. Secretary of State, made a pledge to Gorbachev, who was the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, that NATO would not expand, not 1 inch was the commitment, not 1 inch past East Germany. And NATO has expanded way past East Germany since then. In fact, NATO has expanded more after the fall of the Soviet Union than it ever did during the Soviet Union, when it was ironically created to supposedly contain the Soviet Union. So I think there's a lot of history here where I think the irony is, it's the commitments we haven't kept that have actually, I believe, contributed to Russia's increased aggressiveness. And, I know Russia has a state media. They absolutely do. But we have a media in this country that behaves like a state media as well. And so, you know what, if you were there, you would actually think the U.S. has the same kind of state media that they have there, and they'll think that they're actually just being fed the truth. Well, we're sitting here, we think we're being fed the truth by CNN or whoever else. Well, while we actually may have had our own eyes open to that, to say that there's a lot more to the story. This one as for so many others. That being said, what would I do practically? I would end the war on reasonable terms. A diplomatic deal that rapidly, soon after I take office, brings this war to an end. I would require, that's America first. What's the most important thing for America? The Russia-China military alliance is the top threat we face. Together, those two countries arguably outmatch us. What would I do? I would do a reasonable deal that requires Russia to exit its military alliance with China in return for a hard commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO, which is what Putin's been demanding at every step of the way before he even invaded, and a reasonable deal to have some territorial deal in the eastern provinces that are currently occupied. Now, keep in mind, those provinces are Russian-speaking regions that have never voted in a Ukrainian parliamentary election. For the last 10 years, they haven't. The reason Russia is able to occupy that, but not Kyiv, is that there was no counter-resistance, because many of the people who live there think of themselves as not part of Ukraine, certainly. So I would do a reasonable deal that brings that war to an end. I think that's better for the United States. I think it's better for Ukraine, because it has a deal that's then backstopped by U.S. interests. And it's a deal that Putin would do. Because right now, there are kinks in that armor between the Russia-China relationship. Putin's not enjoying being Xi Jinping's little brother right now. So this is our chance to actually pry that open a little bit, even reopen some economic relations with Russia. Some in the Republican establishment will recoil at my saying that. But I'll remind them that, you know what, this is what Nixon did in 1972 with Mao. Did Nixon trust Mao Zedong? No. But we trusted him to follow his self-interest just as he trusted us to follow ours. Now, we went too far in the other direction into the 1990s. But if we had stopped right around 1980, that would have been a perfect solution. And so, as I said, there's a lot more here. But if you want, in a nutshell, what am I going to do? I said I would keep us out of World War III. Here's how you avoid World War III. Pull Russia out of its alliance with China. If those two nations are no longer in that military alliance and we have actual economic trade relationships that we've opened up again with Russia, that is the single most significant thing I could do to reduce that risk of World War III. And then the $200 billion by the $200 billion we're sending over to Ukraine, nobody said for an iota of a second what the next $100 billion is going to do that the first $100 billion didn't do. And if we use that to protect our own homeland right here in the U.S., $100 billion is all it's going to take to actually harden our electric grid. Our own electric grid could actually be hardened against super EMP attacks, which is what we're vulnerable to now. An EMP attack could take out our electric grid, kill a third of the population in 6 months. For the same money, instead of sending that to Ukraine, we could actually do something we're not doing right now. That's how we both reduce the risk of World War III and protect our own homeland against the vulnerabilities that we actually face right now. So thank you. Hope that gives you some clarity on where I stand. Thank you. Yeah, man, you get the final word.
Thank you. I saw a video from one of your speeches a few days ago where there was some crazy climate.
They were pretty crazy. Yeah.
And they were roughly my age, and I felt embarrassed. And I'm sorry.
You don't need to process. Thank you.
So my question is, and I think those people are brainwashed. I think they're brainwashed by climate and gender, and now with foreign wars. Yeah. How do you bring young Republicans and young independents, and maybe even young Democrats into your movement?
Yeah. No, thank you, man. I appreciate that. You know, and I think they showed up. One of those same. I was told later one of those same guys that actually showed up. This one was relatively organized because they came in. There was like 8 of them in different parts of the room. It feels like they took over the event, and that was okay because my rule of thumb is you give them the mic, and you get a chance to speak freely. But if you're not playing by the same set of rules of everybody, then you'll be escorted out. But if you are playing by the same set of rules, and some of them did, we kept them and let them stay, even if they disagree with what I had to say. You know, at a different candidates event, I think one of those guys had straightly got tackled to the ground. And I don't think that's the right way to handle this either. And I think the right way to do this is respect our free speech rights. The beauty of this country is we're allowed to disagree. You get to speak your mind as long as I get to in return. I mean, that's where maybe I'm different than the traditional Republicans in this race and maybe closer to a Ron Paul in that regard, and I'm proud of it. I believe in the right of people who disagree with me to speak their minds openly and express their opinions. But put that to one side, there's something else going on with the young men and women who were in that room is I don't think they had firm convictions in the things they were saying. I don't think they knew what they were saying. I asked one of them, a guy by the name of Steve Koonin wrote a book called Unsettled. He was a physicist in the Obama Energy Department, though. Not some right-wing conservative or whatever. He's a physicist from the Obama Energy Department, but has written what he thought was a disconnect between the media's distillation of climate science versus the current state of what's known. I asked him if they had heard of or read that book. It was like a deer in the headlights, but for somebody who's dedicated so much energy to pulling something off like what they did there, maybe opening a book about the subject might be a decent place to start, actually, right? And that's where I come back to what we see right now is not a bunch of young people who are against what we have to say. I don't think that's quite it. It's that they're lost. You know, you have recent college campuses. You saw a lot of those, I would say deeply misguided and in some cases offensive protests, chanting, death to Israel or whatnot throughout the college campuses. But the word they were using, they were chanting is intifada, which refers to Arab word for uprising, which many people take as at least as a sign that's hostile to Israel's existence. But if you listen to some of those video clips, you actually hear the chants. You could hear it in the audio. They were chanting infitada, which is not even the word that they think they're supposed to be chanting, right? And so that almost captures what's going on here. And I think that we Republicans, and I think this is why I'm in this race, I see a lot of the other Republicans who on policy agree with 80%, 90% of what I'm telling you, but who are almost frightened of the existence of that, as opposed to saying that it's our job to lead all Americans, actually. We can't just be running from something. I'm in this to lead us back to something, to our vision of what it means to be a citizen of this nation, to those 1776 ideals that set our country into motion. Speaking of young people, it's young people that set that country into motion. Yep. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, while inventing the swivel chair at the exact same time that he wrote the Declaration of Independence, believe it or not. Benjamin Franklin, he was the inventor of the Franklin, also co-signer of that document. He invented the Franklin stove, a lightning rod in the home, the bifocal spectacle, a remedy for the common cold. Robert Livingston, he was an ambassador to France. He also signed the Declaration of Independence. He invented one of the key components of the steamship. These are our founding fathers. What happened to that inner animal spirit? That has been domesticated and tamed and whipped into submission by this new culture that penalizes excellence and celebrates victimhood. And so when we rallied behind the cry to make America great again, I don't think we just hungered for a single man. I think we hungered for the unapologetic pursuit of excellence in this country. We hungered for 1776. We hungered for who we are. And it's up to Republicans now not just to play whack-a-mole. On the other way, wokeism to transgenderism to a guy, tackle him down to the ground and get him out of an event. We're not going to win this that way. The way we're going to win this is by reviving our national identity and diluting this poison to irrelevance. That's how we're going to win. That's the standard I want you to hold me to as your next president. Thank you. And if we do, we no longer... Linda, do you want to ask something?
I just want to interject something.
Sure. You tell me. You tell me.
So I spoke with someone who is a contractor at the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
He says your 75% number is way too low.
I love that. My kind of guy. I love that. Thank you. He's the second person to tell me that, actually. The first person to tell me that was Elon Musk. So you got two guys who knows what they're doing. And that's the kind of criticism I'm very happy to receive, right? Usually it's in the other direction. If we get this done, I don't think that we have to be this nation in decline anymore. I don't think we have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. You know, if Thomas Jefferson were here with us right now, what he would say is that we are still a little young, actually, as a nation, going through our own version of adolescence, figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again. You go through your adolescence, you go through that identity crisis, right? We saw it the other day, do some stupid things. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. And so, no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. I won't be the guy who walks in here and tells you that it's morning in America, because it's not. But it can be. I won't look young people in the eye and tell you that the American dream is alive and well right now. It is not. It is alive and hanging on for life support. But it can be. And it's going to have to be because we all make it together. Not just me. Every one of us. And so I'm here to ask you all to do your part. Tomorrow night, come out. Take 30 minutes. Vote for me at the Iowa Caucus. That's what I'm asking for. Take a little bit of time later today. Do it later today if you can. Tell 10 people what we talked about. Bring them too. And if you all do your part, Apurva and I will do ours to make sure we still look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them that you will get ahead in this country with your own hard work. your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, that is what we will revive to save this great country. Thank you guys for coming today. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you. You have about 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you all for coming out. I want to commend this young lady for bringing your dad out. If you guys all do that, tomorrow night we're going to shock the world. We got some athletes back here I can see. Get your buddies out, get your teammates out.
Yes.
We're going to shock the world. We just have a few minutes, so if you have a camera out, you can get a photo. And also, fill out some caucus cards. We've got caucus cards back here.
Please.
That way we can communicate with you.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Please do. Please do.
Yes,
I will. It's good to see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You want a picture?
Yeah, please.
Okay, good.
1, 2, 3. Thank you, sir.
Hi.
Same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Proud to be here.
Yeah.
You coming out tomorrow night?
Oh yeah, I'm a precinct captain.
Oh, you
for
are?
Yes, I am. Yes,
Bring them
I
in.
am.
Bring them in. Please.
Yes.
We're going to do this together.
Yes.
We're going to do this, guys. Thank you, man. It's good to see you, man. Thank you.
Get a picture?
Yeah.
Drove up from Chicago.
Thank you, man. Thank you for being here.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, man.
My favorite
I appreciate that.
author is Terry Goodkind. He has
Okay.
a quote. He says, "Your life is yours. Live up and raise it." And I think you're
What is it?
doing
What,
that.
grow up and raise it?
He says,
Your
"Your
life
life
is
is
yours.
yours alone. Live up and live it."
I love that.
I
I love
feel
that.
like you're doing that.
That's what we're doing. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, man. Hey.
It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you, man. It's an honor to meet you all.
See you
It's an
again.
honor to meet you. Thank
Mind
you.
if I get a picture
I
with
think they want us to get out. Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take a
Can we take a selfie? Can we take a selfie? Thank you.
Let me get my wife.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hey.
First time we've
seen
Oh, good to see you guys. Thank you. Yeah, good to see you again. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's get one quick, man. Thank you. Let's do it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take a selfie. Yes, thank you.
so much.
Thank
My
you.
daughter's going to take it.
Thank you.
You guys should come to our event in Davenport.
I have 5 children, Gen
Yes.
Zs, millennials. Will you please do a podcast, do something
Oh,
to
in the
speak
White
to
House?
these young people?
I've actually
Yes.
said we're going to keep our once-a-week podcast through the White House. It's the Modern Fireside Chat. That's what I've said. Yeah, we're going to do that. Thank you, guys. Yeah, come on over, man. Thanks. What's your name? What's your name? Kareem. Good to see you. Thank you. We're going to run off to our next event. Tell me.
What are you going to do about transgenders and being taught to children?
Well, kids should not be exposed to any of that stuff and shouldn't be going through any gender-affirming care. There's 2 genders. And if kids think otherwise, we're going to help them get through their mental health struggle. That's what we're going to do. Thank you.
In Iowa, the largest community,
Have you-
Sudanese people are actually the largest per capita.
Okay, I didn't know that. Which Sudanese? Come to the Caucus
When is the
tomorrow night,
and
Monday.
We can mobilize them, but however, we don't feel like the message addresses any of their concern. At the
Okay, we can see if we can. So hopefully we do. I'm going to say what I share, and hopefully they find some resonance with it. But if you can come out, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. That'd be nice. Okay. Well, I don't agree with everything what he said, but I want to reunite the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you.
everything you're doing.
What's your name?
My name is Cindy.
Thank you.
And,
Cindy, good to see you.
I'm a mother and a retired nurse and a very concerned citizen. And you check all the
Makes
boxes.
2 of us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you. Come out tomorrow, and we're going to do our part. Thank you.
I will. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Hey, quick one before we head out.